Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Jonathan Cilia, joined by my co-host, Tim Diacono, and here are your 5 headlines for today. Chris Fearn and Charmaine Gauci are about to announce the lifting of more COVID-19 measures. Malta is now the 2nd most vaccinated country in the world. Raymond Aquilina was gifted an apartment by Jorgen Fenech and sold it to his parents at a reduced rate. The vast majority of Malta's cannabis users do not have a dependency, the white paper architect says. And the Nationalist Party bans candidates and MPs from criticizing and insulting each other in a new swath of rules. Stay tuned to the end of today's episode because we got a very special guest, Matthew Degiorgio, the owner of Gianpula, to talk a little bit about the clubbing industry and what's happening over there. Tim, do you want to take us away into the first story?
Yes, so at 10:30 a.m., Health Minister Chris Fearn and Superintendent of Public Health Charmaine Gauci are expected to announce the next stage in the lifting of COVID-19 measures. There's been no real indication as to what it will be. We know that restaurants and cafes are set to start reopening at limited hours on Monday, and the plan seems to be, with the numbers going down, hospitalizations going down, the more measures can be lifted gradually. So, I don't know, what are you expecting? You think the mask rule will be relaxed?
I'd love to see the mask rule removed. Especially as it starts heating up. It's been over a year of this mask, so I'd love to rip this off, but we have to wait for official guidelines. I'm expecting something about gyms. Gyms has been on people's minds big time. People are really raring to get back into it, both for a physical sense of health, but as well as a mental sense of health. Maybe they'll clarify if we can swim or not. Can we walk on the beach with a mask? But yes, as Tim said, there hasn't been an indication yet. However, you can stay tuned and watch it live at 10:30 a.m. very, very soon on lovinmalta.com. Could be a good day.
Well, yeah, just a note, Malta is meant to be following Israel in terms of removing mandatory masks. Mm-hmm. It's been a few weeks now since Israel removed them, and cases have kept going down in Israel. So
talking about Israel and jumping right into the next story, Malta is officially the 2nd most vaccinated country in the world after Israel. Now, obviously, Israel had a little bit of a head start when it came to procuring a lot of doses, as well as them not being a very large country similar to Malta. But it's really incredible. This is not in the EU, this is in the world. So this was announced yesterday by a journalist, David Keating, who said, quote, Malta, an EU country, is now the 2nd most vaccinated country in the world after Israel. Now this comes as at least 52% of the country has been vaccinated. As you've seen in Malta, there's been quite a quick pickup of vaccines. There hasn't been much reticence like we're seeing in some other countries. As we saw yesterday, I don't know if you saw the news, but in Serbia, they've actually announced that they're going to start paying people 25 euros to get a jab. So not really the same situation as in Malta. We have quite keen population to get vaccinated. I don't know if you saw photos and videos yesterday from university, but there was a massive queue as the over 30s cohort has been opened up. But yeah, it's great to see that Malta's getting the recognition for the efforts it's done in its inoculation drive.
Yeah, it also gives us a moment to think about just how lucky we are. So you often hear these complaints that you have to wait for 2 or 3 hours in the queue, or that you have to drive from St. Paul's Bay to Birzabuj or Birzabuj to St. Paul's Bay. But we're literally in the top tier worldwide behind Israel. To be fair, Israel had a special deal with Pfizer. So in terms of a race, they had an unfair advantage. We could technically be number 1.
Yes.
If it wasn't for this deal with Pfizer, I'm sure we'd be number 1, yes. Moving on to our next story, a bit of a funny one. So, former economic crimes officer Raymond Aquilina it turns out that he was involved in a controversial property deal involving none other than Jorgen Fenech, the suspected murderer. Now, sources have told us, and have told the Times of Malta as well, that what happened was that Jorgen Fenech had this property in Birzabuj, which was worth around 180,000 euro, so decent place, and he sold it to Raymond Aquilina's parents at a reduced rate, at a bargain price. And the policeman's parents then gave him this house as a gift. So what happened was essentially that this economic crimes unit officer who was meant to be investigating money laundering and financial crimes got a free house, courtesy of Jorgen Fenech, who has been involved in so much financial crime, money laundering, murder. And this guy was meant to be investigating. He was one of the only few officers, by the way, at the time who was meant to be investigating all of this. Not only was he not investigating, but he was actually, receiving a house from this guy himself.
It's really shocking. Like every week we find out that Jorgen Fenech had his claws in another sector, in another organization. Now, even with police officials, high-ranking police officials who are supposed to be looking into his case, something important to remember here is that Aquilina actually resigned from his post soon after Jorgen Fenech was arrested. So is it a coincidence? Are they related? Maybe over the next coming few weeks and months we'll find out a bit more on that, but we'll definitely be following the story, so stay tuned to Love for more developments on this. Moving on to the next story, following a discussion that happened last night on national television, on TVM's L'Erba Fossil Gemma, which is hosted by Mark Lawrence Zamit. 4 quite interesting stakeholders were brought in to discuss the ongoing discussion over the cannabis white paper reform that was recently proposed. There was one of the lawyers behind the white paper, Desiree Attard, as well as the president of Relief, Andrew Bonello, the head of Caritas, Anthony Gatt, as well as the dean of the Faculty of Social Wellbeing, Andrew Atspardi. So you had kind of like 2 people in favor of the white paper, 2 people against it. What was really interesting is that pretty much all 4 of them agreed that decriminalization of the plant is the way forward, which actually led to the host, Mark Lawrence, saying, so what are we even here to discuss? But I think one of the most important things that came out of the show was that the lawyer herself, Attard, said, the vast majority of Maltese people who use cannabis do not have a dependency on the plant. Therefore, always focused on those who might have an issue, those who might become dependent or addicted, which is, a very small minority. I think it was about 8% of all people. Writing laws based on those people only, it's criminalizing an entire community, an entire sector of the society, just to protect a few people who, might be protected in other ways. Did you catch the show last night?
Yes, I did, and I was very pleased with how, Desiree Attard went very straight to the point. I wasn't afraid to speak of cannabis users, not as victims or as abusers, but okay, there are a few of them, but in the large part, they're just regular people living their everyday lives, and they have this choice. We've actually said I have a coffee in the morning, someone has a glass of wine after coming back from work, and it's basically the same thing. Yes, it can be abused, like many things can be abused, but it doesn't mean that the law should come down on it. I was very disappointed to see Andrew Atspardi, one of the most renowned lecturers in Malta, speaking complete rubbish about research, about the need for more research, and acting as though he's concerned that that is going to be harming society, when what's harming society is actually the law coming down hard on these people, or treating them not just treating them as abusers, but also treating them as victims is also a problem, right? As in, he kept talking about this board, the dependency board. He's like, it's good, it's a huge success, the tribunal. It's like, no, it's not.
It's really not. I think even Relief President Andrew Bonello said, 56% of all people who are taken in front of the board are cannabis users, and over 90% of those cannabis users are not problematic users. So we're just taking all these people in front of a board, forcing them to say sorry, forcing them to repent for something that they're really not repentful for, and probably as soon as they leave the doors, they're going to go light up. I do get your point. It is very frustrating, especially in light of this white paper, which is specifically there to have a discussion on the proposals. That as we're discussing it, someone's calling for a discussion to maybe discuss it further. It's like, listen, this is the discussion, we don't need to discuss it further. Now is the time. But anyway, I enjoyed the discussion last night, so well done to Mark Lawrence for hosting it, and hopefully we see something more of this caliber moving forward.
Yeah, on our final story, rules have emerged from the Nationalist Party that basically forbids candidates and MPs from criticizing and insulting each other publicly. The point being that an election is approaching, and we can't give off the impression that we're a divided party, obviously, but it's quite telling, I think, that this had to actually be spelled out in writing have given us formal instructions to the candidates and MPs to stop them fighting. I mean, if you remember what happened before the leadership election of last summer, you kind of understand it. However, I don't like the fact that MPs and politicians are being muzzled by their own party from speaking out and being critical. I mean, now it's been put to the test because Adrian Daly, the former leader, has completely gone against the spirit of these rules by naming and shaming Jason Party and challenging him to challenging him to publish chats of Jochen Fenech and his tax returns. So let's see if the party does anything with him. But I mean, it's a test, right? If it's because I don't know, the way I'm seeing it, no matter what it does, like it's damned if they do, damned if they don't.
When I saw Adrian Delia's post and how strongly worded it was against Jason Party, I knew, the party's going to have to react to this. And listen, it's good to see the PN pushing for unity. I mean, voters aren't going to vote for a broken party, a party that has lots of infighting. At the same time, I do hope this doesn't take away too much time from coming up with actual good policies. Voters will be voting for policies too, probably the majority of them. So let's hope that they sort this out ASAP. We'll have to see what Adrian Daly is going to do in reaction to this before the election, right around the corner. That brings us to the end of today's episode, so stay tuned. We're going to cut to a video right now, and when we return in the studios, we're going to have Matthew Degiorgio with us, the owner of Gianpula, to talk about the clubbing industry and the way forward.
In Malta, we don't say.
Okay, and we are back here with us this morning. We've got Matthew Degiorgio from Gianpula. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So, I wanted to bring you in because obviously it's been over a year since, clubs have been closed now. I know they opened very briefly last summer for a bit, but it was only a few weeks. DJs are feeling it, promoters are feeling it, lots of people working in the industry are feeling it. So first off, before we get into the nitty-gritty, what has it been like for Gianpula over these last few months?
It's been very hard because obviously, as you're saying, the first time we stopped was in March, and then we opened up, like everyone knows, in June, briefly, for about 4 weeks. And then obviously we have been closed from the end of July, beginning of August, which has been very, very, very hard. Obviously, a lot of people at the time put the blame on the events and the people coming together. But I think you have to be a bit careful because even at that time, the airport testing was not being done properly. So obviously, tourists were coming in. They were not being tested prior to entering the country. So the first business to suffer was the entertainment industry. And obviously, I hope that this does not happen again when we reopen. We reopen in June, and I hope that obviously we have learned our lessons and the authorities have learned their lessons to have proper testing before people board their flight to enter Malta, either by a negative PCR test or the vaccine green card.
There you go. And we'll talk about the green card very soon. But one thing I wanted to talk to you about is, if you go online, you'll see a lot of very negative comments towards the entertainment industry, like it's to blame for COVID. You see a DJ saying, or a promoter saying, I can't wait to get back to the stages. I can't wait to start entertaining people, and people will attack them. So can you explain to people why is it important to have a healthy clubbing and entertainment industry?
For a start, this is not a hobby. This is a full-time job. This is my full-time job, and this is many people in the industry's full-time job. Some artists that you hear on Facebook talking about the situations because this is their livelihoods.
There you go.
It's very easy for some people to obviously say, no, we don't want the entertainment industry to open. Okay, fair enough, but we need to have an option of how we can reopen, because at the end of the day, many livelihoods come from the entertainment industry, and especially mentally people without the entertainment industry, they feel complete and utterly lost.
It's really important that you bring that up. So what we've been seeing this week, just this week, I think it was in Liverpool, I saw some videos. We're starting to see other countries experimenting with events. Thousands of people who are COVID negative attending parties. It was quite impressive, the footage. We've also seen some footage from New Zealand. Is this something we should start doing in Malta?
Liverpool had 2 events, 3,000 people each. They're also doing them in the conference market as well. There was another one in Liverpool of 400 people as well. Okay. Because obviously people need to realize that it's not just the clubbing industry. You also have the conference market that need to find ways to restart. And obviously our direction is basically telling even authorities, if people get a negative test to enter a venue, an entertainment establishment, or have a green card that have obviously taken the vaccine, what is the problem? And I still have not understood why authorities are not going down that direction. We obviously know that Malta has one of the best vaccination programs throughout the world. But we need a direction, because obviously our businesses know that we are going to be the last to restart. But if there are these certain type of measures, if there are measures, for example, one measure, why can't an establishment open up for fully vaccinated people? Why not? If the authorities are telling us, no, it's not safe, then I'm sorry, why did I take the jab yesterday?
So what are authorities saying right now?
Well, authorities are not giving us much direction, to be fair. They're not really they're being very cautious because of what happened last year. And that's why I'm a bit concerned. That's why I'm telling even the authorities, it's important we get the ports, it's important we get the airports correct. Because if those are not done properly, we're going to end up shutting after 3 weeks.
There you go. So you've mentioned this green card, even now you just mentioned a fully vaccinated party. So for people who might not have heard of this concept, what is this green card and how would it work?
Well, the green card, to be fair, is already happening in Israel. In Israel, there's a green card that has been implemented to everything, from a shop, from a hairdresser, from a nightclub, throughout. So you can only enter into these establishments, non-essentials, with a green card. The green card obviously is a double vaccination. Obviously that you have to have your 2 jabs, or with the Johnson now obviously you have to have your 1 jab. But with the process in Malta that is escalated so immensely, it's done so good, I am convinced that at the end of June, the majority of the population is going to have their both jabs, and we can obviously operate even with these kind of measures.
So I want to speak about, some of the workers that you work with. I know Gianpula is one of the biggest clubs in Malta. You've got a whole swath of employees in different roles. So what have they been telling you? What are their concerns over the last few months?
They're very concerned, obviously mentally as well. The direction is the biggest problem that every employee has in the entertainment industry, and not just my employees, even actual companies that live off the entertainment sector. They want to have a situation where they know if they can obviously start operating in June or July.
Have you heard of any maybe DJs or artists retiring, or companies closing down and saying, you know what?
Yes, some people have shifted. Some artists, some DJs that were obviously full time but couldn't wait. It's been a year and 6 or 7 months. It's no joke. No industry has had this kind of effect. And to be fair as well, you have to understand the nightclub industry has not even had a scheme. Mm-hmm. So this is very important to understand. When the restaurateurs obviously start complaining, they need to realize that, okay, they've been closed as well, but we have stocks as well that we throw away. We have food stocks as well that we throw away, apart from beverage stocks. So it's... The problem is that obviously everyone sees it from their own perspective. And unfortunately, everyone's seeing it till the end of their nose. And if they're not going to start, everyone pulling together. To be fair, I was very happy what the Prime Minister said regarding the the vouchers. And he's basically saying the vouchers are only coming out when every individual business is open, including nightclubs. And that is basically saying that, yes, the nightclubs are a necessity as well. It's a business. And obviously he wants everyone to open and not just give out vouchers when just the restaurants are able to open.
That's a good sign. But, you know, overall, and coming to the end of the interview, do you feel like the entertainment industry has gotten the support it deserved?
Well, to be fair, I think a lot of people out there, the majority, I think, feel the entertainment industry is a hobby industry, which it by far it is not. There are thousands of people that are involved in this industry. And I think, to be fair, people need to start realizing that we need a situation, we need a roadmap. Obviously, I know today, obviously, Christopher and the Minister is going to come up with some new measures. Hopefully, the new measures are on gyms, on masks. Let's see the situation. We do understand that the standing events are not going to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. But obviously, we're hoping that when tourism starts to open up, that the standing events with certain measures, as I'm telling you about, negative tests if need be to enter a nightclub, or even the green card, why not? Let's go for it.
There you go. So that kind of brings me to my final question. So best case scenario, how do you see the rest of 2021?
Well, I'm hoping with no masks. That's for a start. But I'm expecting herd immunity, as the Minister Christopher has announced. Hopefully, the roadmap is for the end of June. And obviously, the entertainment industry knows that the herd immunity is needed ASAP. And obviously, we can start getting back to a form of normality with certain measures that I've mentioned before, because we need to get back to our businesses opening up. And obviously, one of the important things is that our businesses do not reshut. And this is why we are going into the situation where we're trying to explain to people safety is always a priority. Even for nightclub owners, it is a priority. And that's why we're coming to the situation of telling people, listen, let's open up, allow us to open up, but let's do it safely. Let's do it with certain measures like negative test to enter, or even the green card. So in that way, if, God forbid, the cases do escalate slightly, we are not the first businesses to reclose, and we can remain open.
Matthew, thank you so much for joining us this morning and
Thank you
raising
very
awareness.
much. Thank you very much.
Guys, that brings us to the end of today's episode. From everyone at the team, have a day full of lovin'.